Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Without further ado, returning to The Picture of Dorian Gray as read by Lord Naren White. Because I have loved so many of them, Dorian. Oh yes, horrid people with dyed hair and painted faces. Don't run down dyed hair and painted faces. There's an extraordinary charm in them, sometimes. I wish now I had not told you about Sybil Vane. You could not have helped telling me, Dorian. All through your life you will tell me everything you do. Yes, Harry, I believe that is true. I cannot help telling you things. You have a curious influence over me. If I ever did a crime, I would come and confide it to you. You would understand me. People like you, the willful sunbeams of life, don't commit crimes, Dorian. But I am much obliged for the compliment, all the same. And now tell me, reach me the matches, like a good boy. Thanks, tell me, what are your relations with Sybil Vane? Dorian Gray leaped to his feet with flushed cheeks and burning eyes. Harry, Sybil Vane is sacred. It is only the sacred things that are worth touching, Dorian, said Lord Henry, with a strange touch of pathos in his voice. But why should you be annoyed? I suppose she will be yours some day. When she is in love, one always begins by deceiving oneself, and one always ends by deceiving others. That is what the world calls romance. You know her, at any rate, I suppose? Of course I know her. On the first night I was at the theatre, the horrid old Jew came round to the box after the performance was over, and offered to bring me behind the scenes and introduce me to her. I was furious with him, and told him that Juliet had been dead for hundreds of years. I think, and that her body was lying in a marble tomb in Verona. I think, from his blank look of amazement, that he thought I had taken too much champagne or something. I'm not surprised. I was not surprised either. Then he asked me if I wrote for any of the newspapers. I told him I never even read them. He seemed terribly disappointed at that, and confided to me that all the dramatic critics were in a conspiracy against him, and that they were all to be bought. I believe he was quite right there, but on the other hand, most of them are not at all expensive. Well, he seemed to think that they were beyond his means. By the time the lights were being put out in the theatre and I had to go, he wanted me to try some cigars which he strongly recommended. I declined. The next night, of course, I arrived at the theatre again. When he saw me, he made a low bow and assured me that I was patron of art. He was a most offensive brute, though he had me an extraordinary passion for Shakespeare. He told me once with an air of pride that his 3 bankruptcies were entirely due to the poet, whom he insisted on calling the Bard. He seemed to think it a distinction. It was a distinction, my dear Dorian, a great distinction. But when did you first speak to Miss Sybil Vane? The 3rd night. She had been playing Rosalind. I could not help going round. I had thrown her some flowers, and she had looked at me. At least, I fancied that she had. The old Jew was persistent. He seemed determined to bring me behind, so I consented. It was curious, my not wanting to know her, wasn't it? No, I don't think so. My dear Harry, why? I will tell you some other time. Now I want to know about the girl. Sybil? Oh, she was so shy and so gentle. There is something of a child about her. Her eyes opened wide in exquisite wonder when I told her what I thought of her performance, and she seemed rather quite unconscious of her power. I think we were both rather nervous. The old Jew stood grinning at the doorway of the dusty green room, making elaborate speeches about us while we stood, looking at each other like children. He would insist on calling me my lord, so I had to assure Sybil that I was nothing of the kind. She said quite simply to me, You look more like a prince. Upon my word, Dorian, Miss Sybil knows how to pay compliments. You don't understand her, Harry. She regarded me merely as a person in a play. She knows nothing of life. She lives with her mother, a faded, tired woman who played Lady Capulet in a sort of magenta dressing wrapper on the first night, and who looks as if she had seen better days. I know that look. It always depresses me. The Jew wanted to tell me her history, but I said it did not interest me. You are quite right. There is something infinitely mean about other people's tragedies. Sybil is the only thing I care about. what it is to me where she came from. From her little head to her little feet, she is absolutely and entirely divine. I go to see her act every night of my life, and every night she is more marvelous. That is the reason, I suppose, that you will never dine with me now. I thought you must have some curious romance on hand. You have, but it is not quite what I expected. My dear Harry, we either lunch or sup together every day, and I have been to the opera with you several times. You always come dreadfully late. Well, I can't help going to see Sybil play, even if it is only for an act. I get hungry for her presence, and when I think of the wonderful soul that is hidden away in that little ivory body, I am filled with awe. You can dine with me tonight, Dorian, can't you? He shook his head. Tonight she is Imogen, he answered, and tomorrow night she will be Juliet. When is she Sybil Vane? Never. I congratulate you. How horrid you are. She is all the great heroines of the world in one. She is more than an individual. You laugh, but I tell you she has genius. I love her, and I must make her love me. You know all the secrets of life. Tell me how to charm Sybil Vane to love me. I want to make Romeo jealous. I want the dead lovers of the world to hear our laughter and grow sad. I want a breath of our passion to stir their dust into consciousness, to wake their ashes into pain. My God, Harry, how I worship her! He was walking up and down the room as he spoke. Hectic spots of red burned on his cheeks. He was terribly excited. Lord Henry watched him with a subtle sense of pleasure. How different he was now from the shy, frightened boy he had met in Basil Hallward's studio. His nature had developed like a flower, had borne blossoms of scarlet flame. Out of its secret hiding place had crept his soul, and desire had come to meet it on the way. "And what do you propose to do?" said Lord Henry at last. "I want you and Basil to come with me some night and see her act. I have not the slightest fear of the result. You won't be able to refuse to recognize her genius. Then we must get her out of the Jew's hands. She is bound to him for 3 years, and at least for 2 years and 8 months from the present time. I will have to pay him something, of course, when all that is settled. I will take a West End theatre and bring her out properly. She will make the world as mad as she has made me." "Impossible, my dear boy." "Yes, she will. But she has not merely consummate art instinct in her, but she has personality also. And you have often told me that it is personalities, not principles, that move the age." "Well, what night shall we go?" "Let me see. Today is Tuesday. Let us fix tomorrow. She plays Juliet tomorrow." "All right. The Bristol at 8 o'clock, and I will get Basil. Not 8, Harry, please. 6:30. We must be there before the curtain rises. You must see her in the first act, when she meets Romeo. 6:30? What an hour! It will be like having a meat tea. However, just as you wish. Shall you see Basil between this and then? Or shall I write to him?" "Dear Basil! I have not laid eyes on him for a week. It is rather horrid of me, as he has sent me my portrait in the most wonderful frame, designed by himself, and though I am a little jealous of it for being a whole month younger than I am, I must admit that I delight in it. Perhaps you had better write to him. I don't want to see him alone. He says things that annoy me." Lord Henry smiled. "He gives you good advice, I suppose. People are very fond of giving away what they need most themselves. You don't mean to say that Basil has got any passion or romance in him?" "I don't know whether he has any passion, but he certainly has romance," said Lord Henry, with an amused look in his eyes. "Has he never let you know that?" "Never. I must ask him about it. I am rather surprised to hear it. He is the best of fellows, but he seems to me to be just a bit of a Philistine. Since I have known you, Harry, I have discovered that. Basil, my dear boy, puts everything that is charming in him into his work. The consequence is that he has nothing left for life but his prejudices, his principles, and his common sense. The only artists I have ever known who are personally delightful are bad artists. Good artists are given to their art, and consequently are perfectly uninteresting in themselves. A great poet, a really great poet, is the most unpoetical of all creatures. But inferior poets are absolutely fascinating. The worse their rhymes are, the more picturesque they look. The mere fact of having published a book of second-rate sonnets makes a man quite irresistible. He lives the poetry that he cannot write. The others write the poetry they dare not realize. that they dare not realize. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.